Okay, so good evening everyone. My report is the continuation of the first reporter. So I am the one to discuss about the requirement of motivation for students. Okay, so what is motivation? So motivation is defined as the act or process of motivating or a reason why you are doing something. So motivation can be defined as a complex forces, drives, needs, stressful mechanism that can be applied in individual activities in order to pursue and to achieve those goals. So motivation is important life skill in every human because it gives us a pathway to be a goal-oriented. Just like us, we're students, we are motivated to learn, to studies, or to work because we want our dreams to become reality. Okay, so motivation is probably the most important factor that educators can target in order to improve learning. So numerous cross-disciplinary theories have been postulated to explain motivation. So motivation is important in students to participate in the learning process. And also, motivation is one of the strategy to help students discover about the lessons or to have a connection on what they are learning. So even in making a lesson plan or when we do lesson planning, we include motivation or term as paganyak because it is part of the process to help learners concentrate on the lessons in order to energize them and to boost their engagement in the entire discussion. Okay, so motivating student is one of the most challenging things as educators can do just to motivate the learners to learn. However, as I've said earlier, motivation is one of the important element to make the lessons interesting, to capture the students' attention, to be attentive in the lessons or in the discussion, as well as to get them to think. Okay, so motivation can be a form of questions or si teacher magpakita siya og pictures or videos related sa iyang topic. So in that case, the students will be motivated to learn or interested to learn or because of their curiosity. Okay, so we know that the essential ingredients that enables motivation to facilitate deep student learning is engagement. And as educators, we are very aware of how important it is for our learners to be engaged. So, we have here the 5 key ingredients impacting students' motivation. First, we have students. So, students must have access, ability, interest, and value education. So, we all know that students are the raw materials education um, for education and the primary products of educational transformation. So, to foster emergent motivation for the students, it is very important also to note that the educators or the teacher to need to design a variety or different learning styles into a learning system because not all students have the same capacity of learning and every students learn differently. So di man jud tanang estudyante nga pareha og kapasidad na uban nga sakto-sakto ra na uban nga sakto ra o na uban nga mas kamaong. So, in that case, it is important to understand the differences of students' learning style so that they can implement the best practices, strategies into their daily activities. Okay, so next is the teacher. Teacher must be well-trained, must focus, and monitor the educational process, be dedicated and responsive to his or her students, and be inspirational. Okay, so being a well-trained teacher is also important for them to have effective class management skills. So training sessions are needed to help the teachers learn or to create a new teaching strategies which will bring back the interest of their students in the classroom and to encourage learning. And also, the mastery of the subject matter are the most important to motivate students' learning because there are some instances that if a teacher is lack of understanding in his or her lessons or in his subject, it affects the motivation of the students. Like, for example, ang students is mawad anong interest. Di sila ganahang maminaw sa teacher or di na sila ganahang participate sa mga activity. Okay, so next is the content. Content must be accurate, timely, stimulating, and pertinent to the students' current and future needs. So, content is very essential for the students to be motivated. It must be accurate and it must be timely, and it is very important to make the content relevant and useful for the needs of the students. So some technique that will motivate the students is to state the goal or the objectives of your lesson. So from this, the students will be able to inform what they are expected to learn or what they are expected to do at the end of the lesson. Okay, so next is the method or the process. So method must be inventive, encouraging, interesting, beneficial, and provide tools that can be applied to the students' real life. So when we say a method or a process, it is a process or a way in which the content is presented. This approach used for instruction. So if the teacher used technology into his or her lesson, she must do it presentable, creative, in order to catch up the attention of the students. So it must be interesting to the eyes of the students and it must be encouraging. The last key ingredient is the environment. Environment needs to be accessible, safe, positive, personalized as much as possible, and empowering. So, environment must be available and accessible. Like for example, if an environment is not safe, it is difficult and maybe unwise to put all the attention of the students and learning. Kay maybe na ay mga destructive. Okay, so to proceed, we have here the framework of motivation theory is Abraham Harold H. Maslow. Early theory of motivation is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, in Maslow's pyramid, we are motivated to fulfill the basic biological needs such as the water, foods, shelter, and the safety first. So, social needs of belongingness and esteem must be met next before we are motivated to fulfill the self-actualization and the spiritual needs. Okay, so what does it mean? Before students' cognitive needs can be met, they must first fulfill their basic needs like their foods. Dapat kanang wala sila gigutom sa sud sa klase ug naa sila energy, because if the students is hungry or thirsty, it is more difficult for them to focus on learning. Maski kita if gigutom ta sud sa klase is di ta ganahang maminaw sa teacher or di ta ganahang musod sa klase. Next is the two components of motivation. So, the motivation is divided into two components. This is the extrinsic motivation and the intrinsic motivation. So, extrinsic motivation comes from without, then the intrinsic motivation comes from within. So, extrinsic motivation refers to the behavior that is driven by external rewards. These rewards can be tangible, such as money or grades, or intangible, such as praise or fame or other incentives. So, example of extrinsic motivation is like doing schoolwork on to earn a gold grade, working hard at a task or project to receive a praise and recognition, competing for a trophy in a sporting event, and also helping others because you hope for praise. Another positive reinforcement is that if the teacher giving a thumbs up for the students and telling the students that he or she is good, and giving extra privileges and giving a hug or pat on the back of the learners. Remember also that the extrinsic rewards rather, are useful when the students' initial interest is low. Kay if si teacher mohatag siya og positive reinforcement sa estudyante, of course mamotivate ang bata nga mohimo sa iyang mga activity or assignment or mo-participate sa klase, as well as to do better in his or her performances. Next is the intrinsic motivation. So, intrinsic motivation refers to the act of doing something that does not have any obvious external reward. So, intrinsic motivation is opposite siya sa extrinsic motivation, which is ang extrinsic, it's more on positive reinforcement or giving a rewards for the students. But intrinsic motivation is like performing an activity for its own sake rather than the desire for some external rewards, diba? So, like, you do it because it's enjoyable and interesting to you, not because of any outside incentive or pressures like rewards or deadlines. So intrinsic motivation is encourages us to continue learning. Intrinsic motivation is it is more about on personal growth, a sense of duty, or continue learning regardless of what rewards come their way. So intrinsically motivated learners want to learn because they are curious. They want to improve. They seek knowledge, and learning gives them satisfaction. So this form of motivation nurture and encourages the habit of a lifelong learning. So, as I've said earlier, the intrinsic motivation or being an intrinsic learners, it is more performing an activity for his or her own sake. So, like for example, like learning about personal development because you want to improve yourself, and other is you studying because you are curious about the topic. Next is the four theories prominent in Korean educational psychology. That includes the self-efficacy theory, attribution theory, self-worth theory, and the achievement goal theory. So, in the self-efficacy theory, it is a belief that you are capable of carrying out a specific task of reaching a specific goal. So, self-efficacy theory, I think it is the theory of Albert Bandura, and in this theory, it is a person's belief or ability to succeed in a particular situation. Of course, in reaching a specific goal or reaching our goals in life, it involves a determination, encouragement, or perseverance. Next is the attribution theory. So, attribution theory is a psychological concept about how a people explain that the causes of an event or behavior. Okay, so like for example, you get a low mark on a test and you wondering what caused the low mark of yours. So by that, you can construct a explanation why you get that low score of yours. Maybe because wa ka gatuon, and maybe the exam is difficult for you, and maybe you are not smart enough. In attribution theory, it can help you to motivate more yourself. Like magtuon ka pa harder para makakuha ka og taas nga score. Okay, so next is the self-worth theory. So self-worth theory describe an individual's tendency to protect their sense of self-worth as the motive of avoiding failure and hence approaching success. So we all know what does self-worth mean. So it is like a sense of being a good enough or acceptance of oneself or to value ourselves. So next is the achievement goal theory. So it refers to the aim, purpose, or a focus of a person's achievements behavior. So achievements goal theory is very essential to each and everyone because it is our path to be motivated in ourselves. Next is the motivational effects of interest on students' engagement. So, situational interest contributes to the development of individual interest. Stimulating that interest involves both in affective and cognitive processes. So, situational interest can impact the cognitive and affective domains to stimulate personal interest and intrinsic motivation. Okay, so situational interest play an important role in teaching because it serves as a motivator in enhancing students' engagement in learning in both affective and cognitive process because most of the students tend to be more engaged if what they are learning is related to their personal interest. Okay, so, like for example, si teacher is muhatag siyang activity nga more on experiences or opinions of the students, then it can create a engaging to engage students in learning. It is important create a real-world connection because it gives them a better understanding, di ba? Like for example is, ang activities ni teacher is more on life experiences or di ba kaha, si teacher is maghatag siya questions nga about sa essay. So, in that case, the students will easily connect and they can relate the topic. Okay, so teachers are different in motivated versus unmotivated classroom. Teachers with motivated engage a classroom have a different characteristic and exhibit different behaviors than those teachers with classroom in which the motivation and engagement of student is low. Motivating teachers create a positive, upbeat, compassionate classroom where the emphasis is on learning. Lessons are well planned, meaningful, interesting, and allow for student autonomy and cooperation. A motivated teacher is crucial to a successful classroom because teacher motivation is a key element in students' motivation also. If the teacher is motivated in his or her teaching, then the students will motivated also to learn. So, classroom procedures are well developed in motivating classrooms and effective teachers actively teach these procedures so students fully understand them. So also, the self-regulation is clearly evident in motivated classrooms. So, classroom procedures are the routines and the actions in the classroom that you and your students do in a daily basis. So, like for example, in classroom procedures, the teacher will set the rules and regulation nga giagihan sa mga estudyante. So, in classroom procedures, it is very important to explain your routine to your class and tell them what you are expected them to do in a routine. Like for example, si teacher is magkuan og classroom job that each of the student has the responsibilities in the classroom, like mag-assign si teacher kung kinsay manghinlo ani nga area o kinsay manghinlo sad ani nga area o kinsay tig labog sa mga basura.